Hello and welcome to Research Unplugged, a new series produced by the Cairns Institute, where we chat all things research related with our incredible researchers, cadets, academics, and staff here at James Cook University. I'm Aliyah Ravat, and it's my pleasure to be hosting our first video podcast in the series. I'm pleased that you can join us all virtually. And today I'm really excited to be speaking with one of our exceptional students here at James Cook University, who's also the Cairns Institute's first research Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cadet. But before I introduce her, let me take a minute to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we're meeting, watching, and participating. And I pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Ty'a Dynevor. Ty'a recently completed a 12-month cadetship here at the Cairns Institute, and she was working alongside Dr. Vincent Backhouse on the Crown of Thorns project. She's a student here at James Cook University, and may I add, she's very engaged in a number of activities here at the university, as well as in the community. So welcome, Ty'a.
Thank you, Aliyah.
That's all good. And I'm probably going to kickstart this with the most obvious question. Tell us more about yourself, dear.
Before I introduce myself, just want to pay my respects and acknowledge the traditional owners of the country I'm recording here this podcast on. So the Gimuy-walubara Yidinji, Yirrganydji people, and then at the back towards the rainforest, the Jabberkai mob as well. So yeah, so my name is Ty'a Dynevor. My mob is on my mother's side is Gudjul Beri, so Gudjul people down in Charters Towers, and Gurindji out in Northern Territory, Wave Hill country, and then also the Wagga people up in the Torres Strait. And on my dad's side is the Kalali people out southwest Queensland, so Thargomindah, Kulpi area. Yeah.
Thank you so much, for coming today and for talking to us. Tell us more, Ty'a. So what are you studying at JCU?
Yeah, so I'm just almost finishing my Bachelor of Science, majoring in Zoology and Ecology degree.
Excellent. What made you decide to go down that path?
I always loved animals growing up in the environment, and I originally wanted to study veterinary science, so become a vet. But in high school, in my senior years, I was like, I didn't think at the time I was smart enough to do vet science. So I was like, oh no, try something else that's related to animals. So originally I wanted to study wildlife biology at Griffith University on the Gold Coast. And then life happened for me, so I didn't get to finish my year 12 certificate just because of stuff at the school happened. And so I ended up doing my trade, so doing a Cert 3 in business admin, worked in that for a couple of years, and then decided to do a bridging course through JCU, so the Diploma of Higher Ed. So I did that for one semester for 6 months. And then I successfully did a course transfer to go into my bachelor's. So yeah.
Your path wasn't very linear. There was a lot of life that happened in between.
Yeah.
And through that, how did you go? Because not a very linear path at all. And then somehow you ended up in the TCI cadetship program. How did that happen?
So the story goes, so I'm really good friends with a fella named Roderick or Roddy Marbo, and he's an IT student. He's finishing his degree soon too, and he's related to my supervisor at the time, Dr. Vincent Backhouse. And Roddy was asking me like, oh, are you interested, working with my uncle at campus, and we can, try and link you up to work with him, be his research assistant. I was like, oh yeah, like that sounds cool. And at the time it was only just talking about the Crown of Thorns starfish. I didn't realize it was also that social science element. I thought it was primarily like marine science. So I was like, oh yeah, I'll give that a go. And then yeah, that's how I came about. So I had my meet and greet with Dr. Vincent and Prof. Stuart Lockie, and then it was like a informal like interview, but it was like an interview, and then they were happy with my resume and I think I sent a cover letter, and then yeah, I got in.
That's actually the first that I've heard of your story of how you came about being a TCI cadet.
Oh, true.
Especially being on the other side now where the process is has some formal structure to it.
Yeah.
Well, you were definitely pioneering the way. Let me say that. But I mean, what was your experience like coming in and being a part of that cadetship program and working on the Crown of Thorns project?
Yeah, so my first initial experience, so before it became a cadetship, I was like employed as I was a
Mm.
research assistant, but because I didn't have any experience in research and I was still an undergrad student, it was like discussed between you and Prof. Stewart to like lower my like just give me like a reasonable salary and then transforming it into a cadet program that what it's now established as now. But yeah, it was a very good like interim phase, sorry, where I was getting to know more like how a researcher or a higher academic person would be like. So doing a lot of like annotations or bibliographies of journal articles, um, creating big Excel spreadsheets, just keeping track of the data that was being collected through the past or over the course of my cadetship and my employment at the Cairns Institute. Learning how, most importantly, like learning how to engage with reef traditional owners along the Great Barrier Reef, as well as understanding the governance. So looking at the cultural governance of how traditional owners operate, interacting with their day-to-day routine along with their sea country, and then also looking at it from that institutional government's perspective, how big government bodies like Gurumpa or GBRF, how they formalize their things and then how those two things overlap. Yeah, so that was probably the biggest learning experience. The work that I mostly focused on was just, yeah, community engagement with traditional owners. So participating mostly with transcribing with the workshops or interviews that we held, or we as in Dr. Vincent and I did, whether it was one-on-one or it was in a group setting. The two main traditional owner groups that we worked with was Double Judgical, so TOs up in Wujal near Cooktown, and the Dharawal TO group, that's Rockhampton way. So yeah, it was interesting. Very similar groups, but very different at the same time with how they do their cultural protocols. So yeah, it was lovely. Yeah.
It sounds like you got a lot of hands-on practice when it comes to, working with traditional owner groups, especially as you mentioned, learning about the governance systems involved, and you also had a lot of time working on the research side of things. I know you mentioned early on in the conversation that you didn't have many research skills before coming into the cadetship. In what ways have you developed through the cadetship?
It's just like communication. So like instead of like everyday language, just being more articulate, using more academic vocabulary, um like research skills, like I don't know, like from a like, because I was only trained through a social science perspective, not from an like ecology, biology way, but I think it was more just like how to engage and more like the early part. So when we were doing the ethical process, understanding the ethics that are involved with working with traditional owners and doing like like just general report writing. So the whole structure of going out, collecting the data, and then doing the more report side of things. I think that was when I understood like more my research skills, because it was going back to analyze the data, but it was something that I learned, which was like reading between the lines, like reading between what people's statements were, and then just trying to understand that their story is the data that's helping us, like helping scientists understand, like, okay, well, this is what traditional owners want to see, and this is how they feel their sea country is being treated. So yeah, I think my research skills is just based off communication and just more what higher up researchers do, which is data collection, data entry,
Which is a really large part of that. It sounds like you got to see the behind the scenes of what, you usually see as an undergraduate student, which is an end journal article. You got to see, the ethics process and then that qualitative research process. As you mentioned, it was actually the stories that you were collecting, and then seeing how that translates to thematic areas. To then become research. How did you find the process? Did it challenge some of your views, or was it unexpected? Was it what you thought research was like?
Challenging in the sense that I had to learn how to read very fast and interpret my readings. That was like the biggest challenge. But a lot of the articles, that I read were aligned with my worldview kind of thing. So it wasn't too like a big shock to my worldview and how I interpret everything. In a way, to actually kind of like reinforced my worldview and how society's structured and how government's structured and how traditional owners are currently been feeling. But it's been like an ongoing, or it seems like it's been an ongoing feeling of like not being heard, not being seen, not being present at the table, making these very higher up executive decisions. It seems like that's been an ongoing narrative. And I feel like with this particular project, the Crown of Thorns Starfish project, that was Dr. Vincent and my goal. It was to allow these strong voices, strong leaders and figures in our communities to feel seen, feel heard, be present at the table to make these executive decisions alongside with other governing bodies and other like national leaders or state government leaders. And I feel like am I allowed to be honest and truthful on
Go for it.
But I just feel like they haven't been completely honest and transparent with reef traditional owners, and I feel like that's kind of been reflective in the final stages of our report. Like our report hasn't even been published yet, and it's been like well over 6 months now, and it kind of feels like a stab in the back, where it's like all this funding to support traditional owners, support all these programs and projects to co-design and collaborate, and it just feels like when we're at the final stages and we're wanting to publish and share that knowledge, share the truth of how reef traditional owners feel, it's like, oh no, can you use different words, or can you not phrase it in that way? And it's like, but when this is not us talking, this is how the reef traditional owners feel. This is their personal experiences that we're highlighting, and we need to demonstrate that, because if we don't share the truth, then we're not going to achieve anything. We're not going to reach those goals that's been set by the government.
It's really lovely hearing you speak with so much passion, because I think you can really see that the co-design process is about giving that power back to that community and allowing them to, make decisions for themselves and speak with their own voice. And that comes across and is very evident in the way that you describe, your research process and that experience. And you also speak to a larger issue of, the place of co-design in research. And that onus of researchers to actually follow up and to ensure that there is some impact from their research.
Yes.
Which is very much a space that is still unfolding. So I'm really glad you brought that up because, it is something that is still unfolding within the research space.
Absolutely. And I feel too like it's not just impacting traditional owners, it's impacting everyone, like everyone in Australia, but also on that global scale. Yeah. And I feel like that's the bigger goal, is like to understand like climate change and then like reduce the carbon emissions, and then also like protect the reef from coral bleaching. And and I think once scientists continue to try and attempt to look at things from that holistic framework, that's when we'll start seeing reductions in coral bleaching, or we'll see reduction, like we'll have more cooler environments, we won't feel as hot, and just tackling more those global things, but also coming back to those values of respect and transparency, trust, and so it's always like that two-way thing of community engagement, but also that global understanding.
But not looking at it in isolation. So
That's
it's multiple factors, right?
Absolutely.
Has the cadetship and your experience going out and, working on a co-design project in some way shaped your own future career trajectory?
Absolutely. Like I've had this discussion a few times with Dr. Vincent about how this project, with like how we went about in engaging with traditional owners and the formality of it, so getting their consent, whether it was verbal or the written sign form, or I would have liked to have more film and photos, but I understand that was a different thing that wasn't funded or wasn't available for our project, but it would have been nice to have the consent to have photo or audio consent. But definitely for my future, like I want to hopefully one day do my PhD in platypus ecology, but frame it from a holistic point of view. So look at it from a social science, and then like now my current role being operational officer for Jerry Turpin, the ethnobotanist. I want to gain some of those field work skills and that plant knowledge. So when I get up to mapping out how I want to design my PhD, I want to look at it from like a ecological point of view, a botany point of view, a social science point of view, a platypus zoological point of view, like all these different things all come together as one, because it's going to be a complex project, but it will show how how we're all interconnected, how we're all related. And I feel like doing this cadetship reinforced my my views of how I want to set up my PhD, and it's already now like helped me establish those now existing relationship with traditional owners that I can continue my engagement with, but also seek advice. And just knowing like if they have any traditional stories, or their totem is the platypus, and then just keeping that safe and like part of their intellectual property. And
it sounds like you're 10 falls ahead. So you've already thought about what you want to do for your PhD and you know, in some ways you've already developed the relationships to move that forward, which often with a PhD is probably the hardest part. It's those first few years building those relationships, and you've already thought about some of the skills that you need to get there, and you're addressing those skill gaps and starting to work towards it. A question though, before you did the cadetship, did you think that you would go on, or did you plan on did you plan to go and complete a PhD, or did this come about through the cadetship process?
Sort of, kinda, like I knew I wanted to like focus my work with platypuses, but definitely my cadetship and being surrounded by higher like professors and academia people has definitely encouraged me to definitely pursue that pathway. So it was always like a bubble thought, like, oh yeah, that'd be cool. But now doing this process and understanding what research involves, and then making those connections and networking, yeah, it's definitely like, oh yeah, I want to like give this a go. Yeah.
You can see yourself in it now.
Yeah. So I give lots of credit to cadetship, yeah, for putting me down that potential pathway to pursue. Yeah.
It's amazing to hear. I'm so happy that it's had, you know, so much of an impact on your professional pathway. And, you know, we look forward to seeing what comes next, because you're so involved out there, especially like in the university and in the community. And it's so incredible to hear that you're building those skills. I can only imagine that you're going to do great things. But say you did have someone who came to talk to you about your experience as a cadet outside of this conversation, and they said they were interested in doing the cadetship, what advice would you give to them?
Definitely have an open mind. That's probably a good thing to have. Um, and active listening, definitely. Like, yeah, like for example, like my professional relationship with Dr. Vincent is like an uncle. So I see him as like an uncle figure. And that was pretty much the advice I gave our work colleague, Dr. Gillian, like cause she's now got her own cadet that's supporting her with her research project. And both Charlie and Dr. Gillian, they asked me like, oh, how do I go about this? And, you know, do you have any advice? And I was like, yeah, like just like let it come to you kind of thing. And like a lot of our yarns, like between Dr. Vincent and I, was like those coffee catch up type yarns. Even though it was casual yarn, I found that's when we did most of our brainstorming of, okay, like what's the next step? Where we up to with the project? What's the cut? Like what's our deadlines kind of thing? I find those casual spaces is where we get the most work done. That's where we use our productivity. So yeah, so open mind, active listening, and casual catch-ups for productivity.
That's really, really good advice. And I do agree with, you know, the casual catch-ups, because I think there's so much value that comes out of those informal conversations that aren't planned and don't have a very strict agenda to them. It's like, it's that natural flow.
Yeah.
Do you have any closing words for us? I am quite mindful that I've taken quite a bit of your time today.
Yeah, I just want to encourage more mob to well, firstly, I want to encourage mob to give uni a try. I think that's the biggest key thing. Like I know it's one thing saying, oh, I've done uni now, and what next? Like do I just get a good paying job, or is there more to my academic journey? And I think starting with the basics, like having that yarn with community members and mob, and just building up that relationship, building up that courage to be like, oh, like why don't you try uni? And it doesn't have to be like go straight into your bachelor's degree after finishing year 12 or going to TAFE. Like it can just be like, oh, like, you know, you can go to TAFE, you know, do a cert 2 or 3, and then come to uni. Or maybe you can get get some work in your desired field where you want to do your bachelor's, like for example, social work, like get a couple of years of working as a social worker, and then you can go into your bachelor's, like, and I feel like that's the other way. And like, for example, me, like my degree is a 3-year course, but I ended up doing it in a 5-year time frame, and that's just because of my personal circumstances that I had to go through, and I had to defer some time off for mum and family. And I feel that's important. That's what I tell the first year students that are starting here, that don't think that you don't feel pressured that you need to finish it within the desirable time that JCU or any university has set. That's just a guide. That's just a process that's according to them. But you, like, because life happens, like, and you just have to just go at your own pace, go at your own flow. But as long as you can see the end of the goal, you can see that within your reach, that's the important thing. Yeah, because I know
that's important. You've mentioned some really important points there.
Yeah, because I see mob too, like when they're starting out to do the diploma, and I see them like struggle even with doing the diploma, and they easy to give up, and it's more just those words of encouragement, like no, like if you can, try and stick it out, to the end of trimester or end of semester, and then see how you're feeling. And I know it's a bit hard because they might have other personal things going on in their lives, but yeah, it's definitely like just trying to like keep them in the space, and at least they know then, like at least they can say, oh no, not uni's not for me, I'd rather go work, or I'd rather do this, or oh yeah, like I don't mind uni, but the timing's off, and I might come back in a couple of years or come back in a year's time, and that's fine too. Yeah,
I think that's very important to note for all students as well. I mean, breaking down those goals into smaller, more manageable chunks, and also realizing that there's a life to live as well, and life will happen whether we like it or not. And especially when you're balancing, family commitments, affordability, study, and all the rest of that. I mean, I love how you noted, it might be worth doing a smaller diploma and then coming into higher education, or just waiting till it's the right time and knowing that, you don't have to do everything at once.
Yeah, that's it. I feel like that's kind of how I did my degree, because when I did the diploma, I did that the first semester 2019, so I've been at JCU since 2019, and just the second half, that was when I did get into my bachelor's. I just wanted a break because I did 4 subjects, and that was a lot for me. And so I was like, okay, I'll take 6 months off and defer, and I'll come back 2020. And like that was the time when COVID hit, and when I did defer for those 6 months, I ended up going back down south to be with my partner, and I worked as a medical receptionist. So it was like the timing was off, but it was good in that way because I didn't want to do the online. I didn't want to finish my degree as an online course. I prefer that face-to-face interaction, and with my degree too, like there was a lot of field work involved as well. So even then, like it was a blessing in disguise that I ended up deferring for that whole COVID period until the uni reopened itself and wanted students to come back on campus, which I think was like end of 2021, early 22, somewhere around that time frame. Yeah, and that's when I came back at the end of 2021 to start continue my bachelor's. Yeah.
It's really nice hearing how you went through this whole non-linear path, but you were open-minded enough to try different things. And I think that comes back to your first point, and one of the key things the key pieces of advice that you'd give someone else is have an open mind.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today, Ty'a. And, if there is anyone out there who is considering doing a cadetship with the Cairns Institute, I'd highly recommend reaching out to Ty'a. She's very approachable, and you might see her around at the Cairns campus if you're based in Cairns. Perhaps you could grab a coffee and see, if the cadetship is right for you. So I might leave it there. And thank you once again so much, Ty'a, for joining us.
Thank you, Aliyah, for having me. I appreciate